The Miraculous Prayer for Peace in the World. The Divine Mercy Chaplet. Have you ever looked at the world and wondered how everything became so loud yet so empty? How we hear so many voices, so many opinions, and still feel like God is silent? Have you ever felt that quiet ache in your heart when you pray and no answer seems to come? If you've ever asked yourself those questions, stay with me until the end of this reflection. Before we continue, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs peace today. Every person who joins this moment of prayer helps spread light in a world that has forgotten how to listen. The world has never been so full of sound and so void of meaning. Every second, people argue, demand, and shout their truths. Yet, beneath all that noise, there is a silence that feels heavier than any storm. It's the silence of souls that have lost hope, the silence of those who no longer believe that heaven still listens. And that's where the story of divine mercy begins. In that deep and painful silence, when the earth was covered with despair, when nations burned and hearts grew cold, God chose not to speak through thunder or destruction. He chose to speak through a whisper, a prayer given to one humble soul, Saint Faustina Kowalska. She lived in a time when the world was tearing itself apart, and yet, in the stillness of her heart, she heard words that would one day reach every corner of the earth. Say this prayer, and mercy will flow. That is how the Divine Mercy Chaplet was born, not as a religious routine, but as heaven's response to human suffering. God did not send an army. He sent mercy. And in that choice, He revealed something extraordinary. Peace doesn't begin when the world changes. It begins when one heart decides to trust again. The silence that covers the earth today is not the silence of God's absence. It is the silence before His mercy breaks through once more. Every time you take the rosary in your hands, every time you whisper, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," you are not speaking into emptiness. You are breaking through that silence. You are opening a path for light to enter. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is not a distant devotion. It's the heartbeat of heaven echoing on earth. It teaches us that God's answers often come quietly, through faith that refuses to give up. The world listens to noise, but God listens to trust. And right now, as you pray, heaven is not far away. It is listening. When silence covers the earth, mercy begins to rise. And that is where the miracle starts. Not in the noise of men, but in the stillness where God whispers again, calling every soul to believe that His mercy will always have the final word. The forgotten key of divine mercy. There are treasures hidden in faith that the world forgets until it desperately needs them. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is one of those treasures. For years, it rested quietly in prayer books and rosaries, whispered by a few faithful souls who truly understood its power. But mercy, like light, cannot remain hidden forever. When the world sinks into darkness, God reveals again the key He left in our hands, the prayer that unlocks His compassion. The chaplet is not only a set of words repeated with devotion, it is a divine formula of grace, a sacred pattern designed by heaven itself. When Jesus taught Saint Faustina how to pray it, He wasn't giving her a ritual. He was giving humanity a spiritual technology, a key capable of turning suffering into salvation, despair into hope. The simplicity of its structure hides the depth of its meaning. Each phrase, each bead, is a step closer to the heart of God. In her diary, Saint Faustina wrote that she saw rays of light pouring from the heart of Jesus, reaching every corner of the world. Those rays were not mere symbols. They were the visible sign of divine mercy in motion. Through this prayer, those same rays continue to spread even now, touching places we cannot see, healing wounds we don't even know exist. The chaplet reminds us that divine power does not depend on the noise of the world, but on the faith of a single heart that dares to ask for mercy. It's easy to think that the world's problems are too great for one person to change. Yet history shows that when faith meets obedience, heaven acts. The forgotten key of divine mercy waits in the hands of anyone willing to use it. When the words, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," rise from a sincere soul, something shifts in the unseen. Heaven listens. Mercy moves. The same power that once reached Faustina in a humble convent can now reach you wherever you are. We often search for peace in politics, systems, or human strength. But peace born from men fades. Peace born from mercy remains. God did not design the chaplet for saints alone, but for sinners who know their need for forgiveness. It is a prayer that bends time, joining the moment of Christ's sacrifice on the cross with the pain of today's world. It's the key that opens heaven's floodgates again and again, as long as someone is willing to trust. The world may have forgotten, but heaven has not. This key still fits the same lock, still opens the same door to mercy, still carries the same promise that Jesus gave, that whoever turns to his mercy will never be abandoned. And perhaps that's why, in every generation, God reminds one soul, one voice, one heart, to speak the words again. Not to repeat history, but to keep the miracle alive, the vision that stopped time. There are moments when heaven breaks through the veil of the ordinary, and everything changes. For Saint Faustina, that moment came in a simple convent cell in Poland, when time seemed to stand still and eternity entered her sight. She was not expecting it. She was praying, as she always did, when suddenly a light filled the room so intense and pure that the air itself seemed to tremble. In that light stood Jesus, not as a distant figure of faith, but alive, radiant, and full of mercy. From his heart poured two rays, one red, one pale, flowing outward like streams of love reaching the whole world. In that instant, time no longer belonged to her. It was as if God himself had paused the movement of the universe to deliver a message that would outlive empires, wars, and centuries. What Faustina saw was not only a vision, but a revelation. The heart of Christ was open, bleeding with mercy, and the world had forgotten to look. In that silence between heaven and earth, she heard his voice. Say this prayer. It will bring mercy to the world. Imagine the weight of that moment. A young nun, hidden from the world, now carried a message meant for all of humanity. No one around her could see what she saw. Yet, what she witnessed changed everything. The image burned into her soul, not as an idea, but as truth. From that day forward, the mission of mercy became the pulse of her life. Every suffering, every rejection, every tear became part of that mission, to remind the world that divine compassion had not died on the cross. It was still alive, still beating, still waiting for hearts to believe again. When time stopped for her, it was because eternity was speaking. God wanted the world to know that his justice and his mercy are not enemies. They are two sides of the same love. The pale ray represents the water that cleanses the soul. The red ray represents the blood that gives it life. Together, they form the essence of redemption. Through the chaplet, those rays continue to flow wherever the prayer is said. They reach hospitals, prisons, battlefields, and homes. Anywhere someone whispers for mercy. The world calls such visions impossible, but faith knows they are invitations. Faustina's vision was not just for her, it was for us. It was heaven's reminder that even when the world forgets God, God does not forget the world. The clock of mercy never stops ticking. Each time the chaplet is prayed, that same vision is renewed, unseen but real, as if time itself pauses again for one more soul to return to grace. In that brief encounter, time surrendered to eternity, and humanity received a promise that mercy will never end, and peace will always be possible for those who trust in it. The vision that stopped time became the prayer that sustains the world. Mercy as the weapon of light. The world has always believed that strength comes from power, from force, from domination. Yet in the eyes of heaven, true strength has never been measured by conquest, but by compassion. The Divine Mercy Chaplet was given to us as a weapon, not of destruction, but of salvation. It is the weapon of light, forged in the fire of Christ's sacrifice. When it is prayed with faith, it pierces the darkness that surrounds the soul and pushes back the shadows that cover the world. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is divine courage. It is the act of standing before evil and choosing to forgive instead of hate, to bless instead of curse, to heal instead of wound. The world cannot understand this kind of strength because it cannot control it. Mercy flows from the very heart of God, and when it enters a human heart, it transforms it into something unstoppable. When you pray the chaplet, you are not escaping the world's pain. You are confronting it with the light of heaven. Every word of this prayer is a declaration of battle. Have mercy on us and on the whole world is not a request. It is an intercession. You are standing in the gap between despair and hope, calling down the blood and water that once poured from the heart of Christ. That is why mercy is stronger than vengeance. It breaks the chain of hate that has trapped humanity since the first sin. It disarms the enemy not by force, but by grace. Saint Faustina understood this power. She wrote that each time the chaplet was prayed, souls were rescued, even at the moment of death. That mercy reached into places no sword or army could ever touch. It entered hospital rooms, prisons, battlefields, and hearts hardened by years of pain. It healed without condition, because mercy cannot be earned. It can only be received. The one who trusts in it becomes an instrument of peace, a bearer of light in a wounded world. We often think of battles as something fought outside us, but the greatest battle is within. It is the struggle between pride and surrender, fear and faith, judgment and forgiveness. The chaplet teaches us how to win that war, not by resisting weakness, but by transforming it into prayer. Every time we turn to mercy, we allow God to turn our wounds into windows for His grace to enter. This is the hidden truth that the world has forgotten. Mercy is not the absence of justice. It is justice perfected in love. It is the light that reveals, the power that redeems, and the peace that cannot be destroyed. When you take up the chaplet, you are not whispering empty words. You are lifting a sword made of compassion, a weapon that no darkness can overcome. Mercy remains the only force strong enough to change hearts, to rebuild what hatred has torn apart, and to bring back light where the world thought only night remained. And in the hands of those who believe, it is the weapon that will never fail, the pulse of heaven in every bead. There is a rhythm to the Divine Mercy Chaplet that mirrors the very heartbeat of heaven. Every bead you touch, every word you speak, becomes part of a living dialogue between your soul and the heart of God. It is not a mechanical repetition, but a spiritual pulse, a steady beat of mercy echoing through time. When you pray it with awareness, you begin to feel that rhythm inside you, and your own heartbeat starts to align with the mercy that sustains creation. The world teaches us to rush, to fill every silence with noise, to measure worth in results. But this prayer slows everything down. It draws you out of chaos and into a sacred stillness, where only love speaks. In that quiet, the beads slip through your fingers like drops of light, carrying your fears, your gratitude, your pain, and transforming them into grace. Heaven listens to each word, not because of its beauty, but because it is offered with trust. Saint Faustina once said that the chaplet has the power to calm the anger of God. That statement is not about fear, it's about intimacy. It means that our prayers can move the heart of the Creator. Imagine that. The same God who set the stars in motion bends his ear toward a humble voice, reciting the words, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world." Each time those words are spoken, something invisible happens. A soul somewhere finds peace. A wound begins to heal. And light enters a place that was once filled with despair. The chaplet is more than prayer. It is participation in divine rhythm. The repetition of its words is like the breath of a soul learning to rest again in the arms of God. The world may not hear it, but heaven does. Angels carry those words as if they were seeds, planting them in hearts that need them most. In this way, the chaplet becomes a river of mercy, flowing from one heart to another, connecting the faithful across continents, languages, and time itself. Every bead is an offering, every prayer a pulse of hope. You may never see the results of your prayer, but that does not mean they are small. Nothing spoken in mercy is ever lost. It rises like incense, it travels like light, it reaches places that hands and voices cannot. The power of this prayer lies not in its volume, but in its constancy. Each repetition keeps the world's fragile heart beating a little longer in grace. When you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, you are not alone. You join the rhythm of countless souls, living and departed, forming one great symphony of trust. Heaven listens, earth breathes, and time itself slows in reverence. This is the pulse of heaven, the steady heartbeat of a God who refuses to stop loving. And as your fingers move along each bead, remember, you are touching eternity. The day the world stood still. There are moments in history when everything stops, when time itself seems to hold its breath. In those moments, humanity looks upward, desperate for meaning, for comfort, for peace. The Divine Mercy Chaplet was born for such times. It was not meant only for quiet prayer, but for days when the world trembles. In the darkest hours, this prayer has risen like light breaking through a storm, reminding humanity that even in chaos, God is near. There are countless stories that prove this truth. During times of war, when bombs fell and death was certain, soldiers and civilians alike clung to the chaplet. Some prayed as cities burned, believing that mercy could protect what weapons could not. In one village, people gathered in a small church and began to recite it as enemy planes approached. The sky roared, but no bombs fell. When it was over, every surrounding town had been destroyed, except the one where the chaplet was prayed. They called it coincidence, but those who prayed knew it was mercy. In hospitals where machines whispered the final rhythm of life, families have prayed this same devotion beside the dying. And time, once again, seemed to pause. Faces that were tight with fear softened into peace. Some took their last breath as the final words were spoken, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world." Others, who were given no chance to survive, opened their eyes again. No one could explain it. They simply said, "It was mercy." There are also miracles we never see. Wars averted, hearts softened, accidents avoided. All because somewhere, someone whispered the chaplet at just the right moment. The world will never record these events in history books, but heaven does. Every act of mercy, every prayer spoken in faith, becomes part of that eternal record of love. The day the world stood still is not one single day. It is every moment when mercy interrupts despair and proves that light cannot be defeated. When Saint Faustina wrote in her diary about God's promise that the chaplet could stop punishment, she was not writing a metaphor. She was describing the reality of divine power released through human trust. Mercy doesn't erase suffering, but it transforms it. It changes what pain means. It turns tragedy into testimony. Every time the prayer is said, something shifts, even if we never see it. The world may continue to turn, but mercy slows its collapse. It gives humanity another chance to choose forgiveness over hate, faith over fear, life over death. And maybe, somewhere right now, a soul is praying the chaplet again, holding back darkness for someone who doesn't even know it. That is what makes this devotion eternal. The day the world stood still is not history. It's happening now, every time mercy is invoked. Heaven listens, time pauses, and the heart of God beats once more for the world He still loves. The hidden battle for peace. There is a battle unfolding that most people cannot see. It is not fought with weapons or armies, but within hearts, homes, and nations. The Divine Mercy Chaplet stands at the center of this unseen war, a war between despair and trust, hatred and forgiveness, darkness and light. Every prayer said with faith becomes a weapon in that battle. Each whisper of "Have mercy on us and on the whole world" strikes at the roots of evil that seek to divide and destroy. Peace has never been a simple absence of war. True peace is the quiet strength of a soul that refuses to surrender to fear. The world believes peace is something to be negotiated, but heaven knows it is something to be prayed for, fought for, and protected. When you pray the chaplet, you are not escaping from conflict. You are stepping onto the battlefield of mercy. It is a spiritual war fought not with anger, but with compassion, not with power, but with trust. The enemy of peace is not only found in the violence of nations, but in the restlessness of the human heart. Pride, resentment, and fear are its weapons, and yet mercy disarms them all. It transforms pride into humility, resentment into healing, fear into faith. That is why Jesus gave this prayer, to teach humanity how to fight the right way, with love that does not end. The soul that prays the chaplet becomes a shield for others, standing silently between suffering and grace, asking heaven to intervene where human strength fails. Saint Faustina saw visions of this spiritual warfare. She saw angels of justice ready to strike the world, and she saw how one prayer could stay their hands. That prayer was the chaplet. The moment she began to pray, divine light surrounded her, and mercy poured down like a flood. The punishment was withheld, not because humanity deserved it, but because someone dared to ask for mercy. That same power remains today. Every time you kneel and begin those words, you are joining a war older than history. You are taking your place in the army of mercy. Unseen, but powerful. It is a battle that will never make headlines, yet it decides the fate of countless souls. You may never see the results, but heaven counts every act of trust as a victory. When you pray for peace, even in silence, the balance between light and darkness shifts. The hidden battle for peace is won not by force, but by surrender. The surrender of the human will to divine love. When one soul chooses mercy over judgment, heaven rejoices. When a family forgives, an unseen war ends. And when the world prays the chaplet together, even the darkest night begins to break. You are not powerless in the face of the world's chaos. You carry a weapon the darkness fears, the weapon of mercy, the prayer of peace, the cry that touches the heart of God. And when you use it, heaven fights beside you. The chain that connects all souls. When you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, you are never praying alone. Even if your room is quiet and the world outside feels distant, your voice joins countless others, past, present, and future, in one continuous cry for mercy. The chaplet forms an invisible chain of souls stretching across the earth and beyond time itself. Each bead, each voice, becomes a link in that golden chain, binding humanity to the heart of God. It is a connection that not even death can break. Imagine millions of people in different corners of the world praying the same words at the same moment. A mother in Brazil, a priest in Poland, a soldier in Ukraine, a child in Africa, all repeating the same plea for mercy. Their voices blend into one great act of intercession that rises like a song before the throne of God. It is not just a prayer, it is the heartbeat of the Church alive across nations, languages, and generations. Saint Faustina once saw the power of this unity. She wrote that when the chaplet was prayed collectively, rays of mercy covered the earth like a net of light. Those rays moved through hospitals, prisons, and homes, reaching souls who didn't even know someone was praying for them. That is the mystery of this devotion. It connects the faithful in a way beyond human understanding. Through mercy, we are never strangers. We are one body breathing with the same spirit. Even the souls in purgatory are touched by this chain. When we pray, we don't pray only for the living. Mercy crosses the boundaries of life and death, reaching those who still wait to see the face of God. Heaven listens, purgatory rejoices, and earth is strengthened all at once. The chaplet unites what sin has divided. It brings back harmony where chaos once ruled. There is something humbling about realizing that your small prayer, whispered perhaps in exhaustion or doubt, joins a cosmic movement of grace. Your voice might tremble, your faith might feel small, but when joined to the chain of mercy, it becomes part of something eternal. That's how God works. He multiplies what we offer and turns it into salvation for others. When you hold the rosary in your hands, you are holding a lifeline, a bridge between worlds. Every bead is a soul. Every repetition sends light into darkness. The more people pray, the stronger the chain becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the more mercy floods the world. This chain has no beginning and no end. It was forged on the cross when blood and water flowed from Christ's side, and it continues through every person who trusts in His mercy. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is not only a prayer, it is the living bond of love that keeps the world from falling apart. To be part of it is to take your place among saints, angels, and believers who stand together as one. When you pray, you are not one voice. You are part of the chain that connects all souls, and through that chain, heaven holds the world together. When the heart of Christ beats again, there is a moment in every prayer of the Divine Mercy Chaplet when something shifts, not outside of you, but within. The world may remain loud and broken, but inside, something begins to move. It is as if, with each repetition of mercy, the heart of Christ begins to beat again inside the human soul. What once felt cold begins to warm. What once felt distant begins to live again. That is the true miracle of this devotion. It doesn't just change situations, it resurrects hearts. The chaplet does not belong only to those who are strong in faith. It belongs especially to those who are weary, wounded, and lost. When you begin to pray it sincerely, it reaches into places you've hidden, even the ones you've convinced yourself God no longer visits. The mercy of Jesus does not wait for perfection. It enters imperfection to heal it. Every "Have mercy on us and on the whole world" is a heartbeat that pumps life back into what sin, fear, or sorrow tried to silence. Saint Faustina wrote that when she prayed the chaplet, she felt as though Christ himself was breathing through her words. That is what mercy does. It breathes life into souls that can no longer find the strength to hope. You don't have to feel holy to pray it. You only have to open your heart, even slightly, and the rest belongs to Him. That's when His pulse becomes yours, steady and gentle, restoring peace where anxiety once ruled. In that sacred rhythm, Christ's heart and your heart begin to beat together. It is not an emotional illusion, it is spiritual reality. His mercy fills the emptiness inside you, washes through your memories, and softens the places hardened by time or pain. You begin to see others differently. Compassion grows. The desire to judge fades. You start to feel what Jesus feels, to suffer with those who suffer, to forgive those who fail, to love those who have forgotten how to love. The heart of Christ beating again in you is the proof that mercy works. It doesn't only save souls, it transforms them. It turns anger into tenderness, grief into surrender, and loneliness into communion. Each prayer becomes an act of divine surgery, replacing a heart of stone with a heart of flesh. You begin to realize that peace in the world starts in the heart of one person, yours. This is why the chaplet is more than words. It is an invitation to become living mercy. When you pray, you are not speaking into emptiness. You are allowing Christ to live through you. His sacred heart, once pierced for love, continues to beat in every soul that says, "Jesus, I trust in you." That trust is the pulse that keeps faith alive when everything else feels uncertain. And maybe that is what the world needs most right now. Not louder voices or stronger leaders, but hearts that beat again with His mercy. Because when the heart of Christ beats again in one soul, heaven rejoices, and the world begins to heal. The dawn of mercy. There comes a moment when the long night finally breaks. The darkness doesn't disappear all at once. It begins with a faint glow on the horizon. Quiet, but certain. That is how mercy enters the world. It doesn't shout. It rises, slowly, steadily, until light touches every place once covered in shadow. This is the dawn of mercy, the moment when heaven's patience meets humanity's surrender. And every time the Divine Mercy Chaplet is prayed with trust, that dawn begins again. The night we live in is not just made of wars or disasters. It is made of fear, division, and silence between hearts. People walk through life carrying invisible wounds, believing that no one sees them. But God does. In every heart that turns toward Him in prayer, He begins to write a new morning. The rays that poured from Christ's heart in Faustina's vision were not bound to the past. they still stretch across time, touching the present, calling us to believe that no darkness is forever. Mercy is God's sunrise. It is His way of saying, you still have another chance. And that chance is offered to the world each day, through those who trust, those who forgive, those who choose to love instead of hate. When you take the chaplet in your hands, you become part of that rising light. You become the answer to someone else's prayer. Even if you don't see it, the world grows brighter with every word you offer in faith. This dawn does not depend on nations or leaders. It begins inside the soul that dares to trust. When a person forgives an enemy, mercy rises. When a sinner kneels and says, Jesus, I trust in you, mercy rises. When someone prays for a world that has forgotten to pray, mercy rises again. The sun of God's compassion never truly sets. It waits behind every cloud of doubt, ready to shine when hearts open. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is the morning call of heaven to the earth. It invites us to wake up from indifference, to lift our eyes from fear, and to see that love is still stronger than evil. Through this prayer, God turns pain into peace, guilt into grace, and endings into new beginnings. The dawn of mercy is not a dream. It is the reality of every soul who decides to trust the love that never ends. And as light breaks over the world once more, heaven repeats the same invitation given to Faustina. Trust, pray, believe. Because mercy is not a story. It is a living flame that rises again each time we call upon it. And if we dare to let that flame grow in our hearts, then peace will no longer be a distant hope, but a living truth. This is the dawn that never fades. The dawn of mercy that transforms the earth, one prayer, one heart, one soul at a time.